Hello and welcome to another episode of SPARKS. This is my channel where I'm making it my mission to show that every song by Ron and Russell Mael is actually about Sparks, as unlikely as that might sound even to the most seasoned Sparks fans. My claim is that every song offers real insight into their unique creative process and these fiercely ambitious creative goals. And it always comes delivered in the form of an intricate puzzle that spans songs. This is all about how the songs relate to each other and what those connections tell us about Sparks. And today's puzzle is The Very Next Fight. This is track 3 from the 2006 album Hello Young Lovers. On the surface, the main character is this guy who gets confrontational when other people look at his girl. It's about fighting in restaurants. So there's nothing here that's obviously about Sparks, but let's join the dots and see what this song says about this moment in the Sparks story.
The very next fight I have over you will end up the same, it's always the same. The very next fight from out of the blue will end up the same, it's always the same.
On the surface, these lyrics seem to explore the cyclical nature of jealousy and insecurity in a relationship, so it's a very human song. But I'm not here to talk about human relationships, rather I'm here to talk about Ron's relationship with his own songwriting. My mantra here on Sparks is that every love interest in a Sparks song is actually about Ron's relationship with his own songwriting. Literally, every woman in a Sparks song is a personification of Ron's relationship with his own creative muse. It's a personification of the source of Ron's wild ideas. And just because he has a seemingly never-ending stream of creativity doesn't mean that comes for free. It's something that he has to put work into, like any relationship. It's something that he has to fight for. And that's what this song is about. The lengths that Ron Mael, along with his brother, will go to in order to keep that spark alive. So the very next fight I have over you is the fight that Ron has in defense of his creative muse. So it's career battles and Sparks are fighters. But at this point, in 2006, their career was defined as much by misses as it was by success. They'd fought and won and fought and lost several times over, one fight after another. And that is a similar sentiment to what we heard on the song Ride 'Em Cowboy from this album's predecessor, Little Beethoven.
From soup to nuts, from chalk to guts, from shore to chance, from can to cans, from smart to dumb, from bread to crumbs, from wound to board, ole, then chord, right the board.
I've got thrown again.
Right the board.
Get back on again.
Right the board.
I've got thrown again.
Right the board.
Get back on again.
If you put both of these songs into the context of Sparks' career, then this guy who gets thrown again and gets back on again over and over sits really well next to this other guy who gets into fights all the time. And the repetition is key in both songs. It's always the same. At this point in their career, each of their soaring achievements was followed by a sharp decline, a loss of commercial momentum from out of the blue, several times over. So some fights you win and some fights you lose. And this is how Sparks put it in the year 2020.
All that we've done, we've lost, we've won.
There's a similar sentiment on their brand new single.
Gonna run, gonna fly, gonna do things my own way. Fall behind, bye bye bye, gonna do things my own way.
So Sparks do things their own way, and here they say that they run and fly, which is good, but then they give equal weight to falling behind. It's as if they don't mind being losers if it serves for greater good. So flop albums like Balls or Interior Design are as important to their story as Kimono My House or Number One in Heaven. And this mindset explains wardrobe decisions like this.
That is what I had intended, pretending to be drunk. A little change in character, I'm pretending to be drunk. You think I am weak and feeble, you think I'm a bore.
So the lyrics here are, "This is what I intended." They intended to look far less cool than they really are, because these kind of misses can help prolong their creativity. The justification for this kind of behaviour can be found as far back as 1974. This is the song Achoo. Now, the full interpretation of this song is due on a future episode of Meta Sparks, but let's have a look at that line in the context of a career in pop music. All winners will be also rans. In other words, success is short-lived, it's toxic to creativity, so why not be losers? Why not aim for less commercially successful? And the idea of this being done with intent is captured nicely on the song How to Get Your Arse Kicked from the year 2000. This is also about fighting, so it works as a nice precursor to the very next fight.
And that's how to get your ass kicked. 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 Oh well. Oh well. Oh well. Oh well.
The verses to this song have the main character stumble into situations where he'll inevitably get beaten up. He flips off biker gangs and wanders into rough areas. That's how to get your arse kicked. That's how to lose. And yet he doesn't seem to mind. He just says, oh well. It's as if it's minor, it's no big deal. Easily shrugged off. This is from the album Balls, and last year I made a series going through every song line by line and putting it into a very particular context. The whole album has a story hidden behind these songs, and that is that the album was actually designed to fail commercially. As they put it, it's designed to fail, and this is in order to free the band from their contract. They used the label's budget to develop Little Beethoven, so Logic Records paid for Little Beethoven, but they received Balls. And that's a really ballsy move that's signalled in the title track.
You can sting or be stung, you can fling or be flung, it's all up to you.
It says here you can sting or be stung, so again you can be winners or losers. And if my theory holds, then Sparks are simultaneously winners and losers on this record. They sting their record label by delivering a commercial dud, and in doing so, they look like losers. So that's how you get your arse kicked, by delivering an album that you know will make you look bad, and the label will hate it so much that you get dropped, which must be a horrible feeling, but oh well, because ultimately you're gaining back your commercial and creative freedom. So that's one of many fights in Sparks' career that I'm going to talk about in this video. But now let's return to the very next fight where Sparks are talking about where they want to go next.
Some idiot staring at your legs, I know. You quietly tell me I should let it go. But how can I let it go when I can't control myself? How can I let it go when I cannot help myself?
This verse sounds really simple, like there's not that much to understand, but as ever, it's deceptively complex and nuanced. It appears to be about a guy who flies into fits of rage when he sees other men staring at his girlfriend's legs. And that's got quite a lot in common with the opening verse to How to Get Your Ass Kicked, about staring in public, and also Marry Me from 1974, which is about other men hitting on his girl. But I see this not as a romantic thing, but a kind of wordplay about the composition process. If you imagine it as being Ron Mail in the first person, and I mean this literally, I mean Ron sat at his piano trying to come up with the next Sparks song. He'd be looking down at his keyboard, and usually he'd be looking at his own hands. But in this case, for reasons I'll go on to explain, he doesn't know what to write. So it's kind of as close to a creative block as Ron Mail will ever get. And instead of looking at his keyboard, he's some idiot who's just staring down at his own legs. So it's self-deprecating. And the reason I think this is because in my video for Dick Around, I make the case that Ron, at this point, has achieved all of his goals by making an album that's a pure expression of creative and commercial freedom, which was Little Beethoven. And having achieved that, he just didn't know where to go next. And I believe Ron Mail always uses his music to define where the band are going to go next. And hopefully that'll all make more sense if you watch my Dick Around video and also my Perfume video, which say much the same thing. But here, I believe Ron is trying to figure out where to go, but he just doesn't want to get into another fight. Up until this point, their career was fueled by these fights for they pick. And his muse is quietly telling him that he should let go of all of these insecurities. And he's saying, but why should I do that when I can't control myself and when he can't help himself? As in, Sparks' career up until the millennium was defined by Sparks making life difficult for themselves over and over again.
When I can't control myself, cannot help myself, cannot help myself, control myself, cannot help myself, cannot help myself, it's always the same, control myself, always the same, help myself, always the same, control myself, always the same, help myself, always the same, myself, it's always the same, myself, it's always the same, myself, it's always the same, myself, can't help myself.
So it's always the same. Ron and Russell can't help picking these fights in defence of Sparks, in defence of their baby. And arguably that was there right from the start, because of course Sparks started out as a 5-piece. The US version of the band had momentum, and this is a band who could have gone far with that lineup and with that sound. However, Ron had a new vision, and that didn't involve their old friends that they started the band with, so they left them behind and they started another 5-piece. And this was arguably the best lineup that Sparks ever had. But then, album by album, they dismissed those members too. And again, there's a strong case that had the Kimono lineup remained, then commercially the band could have done much better. However, artistically, we now know that this was absolutely the correct decision in defining Sparks as being just Ron and Russell with this ever-changing lineup. These couldn't have been easy decisions, so it was a fight worth having. So when I talk about fighting in this video, it can be with former members of the band or various producers or people in record labels, but mainly it's the fact that they keep on turning left when the rest of the industry turns right. They will always make the hardest decision. And now we're used to the way that Sparks operate, it's too easy to believe that that's an easy decision or a natural decision. But all of this must take its toll. And I believe in this stage of Sparks' career when they recorded Hello Young Lovers. They were questioning whether that approach that had seen them so far was something sustainable, or was that going to take its toll? They were trying to define what this new version of Sparks would be. And over the next verse, we get closer to learning just what Sparks want for their future. And of course, it's disguised as a verse about fighting in a restaurant.
The very next fight is how you will end up the same. It's always the same. The very next fight from out of the blue will end up the same. It's always the same. Blood on the floor of some posh restaurant. Deep down, I'm sure that this is what you want. And what you want is what I want. What you want is what I want.
Let's start with that line, blood on the floor of some posh restaurant, because in the context of the song, this adds so much weight. It typifies what's great about Sparks, because as a standalone line, it's just beautiful. It's really nice. And it adds weight to the meaning of the song, because having this fighting occur in a posh restaurant tells us a lot about this character. It would be a completely different song if the fighting was occurring in like a dive bar. But the whole thing takes on an even greater meaning in the context of Sparks' entire back catalogue. And what I mean by this is, if you take a look at where they've referenced posh restaurants before, then it tells you a lot about the sort of songwriting that Ron was employing at that time. So what I mean by this is, if you look back at the Island years, from Kimono running through to Indiscreet, then there are lots of references to fine dining, and it kind of fits the sophistication that was present in the lyrics. However, that can be contrasted by the early 80s version of Sparks, the version that were backed by the Bates Motel band. So I'm talking Whomp That Sucker and Angst in My Pants. And this was a point where Sparks were just far sillier. And there's references to dining on those albums as well, but it's more junk food, which again seems to fit the style of songwriting from that time. It fits the version of Sparks that appeared on K-Rock in Los Angeles at that time. So hopefully you'll see what I mean when I go through these examples. So to start, let's take a look at song 2 from the Island years. This is Amateur Hour.
Dance, rock, wine, dine, talk and sing, but those cannot replace what is the real thing.
So once again, I've got an entire video on this song giving an alternative explanation to the meaning of these lyrics. And this exemplifies that sophistication that I was talking about. Dance, laugh, wine, dine, talk and sing. It's almost like a mood board for the type of lyrics they're writing. It's good taste, but taste cannot replace what is the real thing. So as a band, they need more than just sophisticated taste. And the reason I think this holds water is because this bullet-pointed list makes a reappearance shortly after in the opening verse to Thank God It's Not Christmas.
What do I hear? Chit-chat and clinking glass, cheap talk, a lady's laugh, after hours.
So that mood board of tasteful lyrics that Ron listed on Amateur Hour, Dance, Laugh, Wine, Dine, Talk and Sing, is repurposed here. It's put into a different form, and this time it's all ladies' laughs and clinking glasses. This is what Ron hears. This is the music in his head while he's writing in this sophisticated style for Kimono My House. And that's not the only place where tasteful fine dining can be linked to the songwriting process.
Kimono My House, no, no. I am sure that this ocean don't need no accompanying words. This song is wrong because you fled, leaving me with my mission. I didn't have to get bored with bed.
That's Hasta Mañana Monsieur, and in my Kimono My House video I make the case that this is about the detrimental effect of having another songwriter in Sparks. So it's basically about the former bassist Martin Gordon. And here he's knocked Ron's songwriting off course, so his muse has fled. And Ron is desperately trying to write a song, and what does he take as inspiration? It's a Michelin Guide, which is a book that details the finest restaurants in the world. So if you went through the pages of a Michelin Guide, you might get words like dance, laugh, wine, dine, talk, and sing. So these are pretty stark parallels in my view, and it appears to be referencing a running joke that Ron and Russell had when they were in the studio. And it was a joke that they were playing on the English members of the band. Martin Gordon, the bassist on Kimono My House, was recently interviewed for Viva Le Rock, and he had this anecdote to share. Band banter at rehearsals took a typically quirky turn thanks to Russell Mail's habit of photographically documenting Indian restaurants for collective discussion at the following day's rehearsal. Gordon remembers, "I was never exactly sure what kind of response was required. I think I just said, 'Oh, I see, very nice,' kind of portmanteau answer that I find fits the bill on such occasions." So in my view, that's a joke where Russell is trying to bring the other band members into this world of songwriting without explicitly telling them what it's all about. And this sort of thing also makes an appearance on the Indiscreet album from a year later. For example, this song about the Paris Ritz Hotel, where fine dining originated.
When the explosion rocked the lobby of the Ritz Hotel, oh, nobody moved for fear of learning that they weren't all that well.
The Paris Ritz Hotel was founded in collaboration between a hotelier and the world's finest French chef. A lot of what we think of today as the greatest French food originated right here. And in this story, there's an explosion in the lobby, which fits really well into the theory I present on my Meta Guide to Indiscreet video, where I talk about Sparks intentionally making something that will hurt their commercial success, effectively crashing the plane, as you see on the album cover. And then there's more sophisticated dining on this song.
Nobody misses the diminutive of spring, not when there's big wigs there. Dinner for 12 is now dinner for 10, 'cause I'm under the table with her.
This song sits right in the centre of sophistication and dining, and you have two people leaving the party, which is what Sparks were about to do by returning to America. So once again, it fits right into the world they're presenting as Sparks being tasteful and sophisticated. And that takes an unusual turn on this song. This is Pineapple.
Shout, pineapple, pineapple, pineapple fulfills every need.
These days we think of pineapple as that slightly weird fruit that you put on pizzas and comes in cans. But go back a few hundred years and it was the epitome of sophistication. In fact, people used to rent pineapples just to put on the table because they were so strange and exotic. So this song sits in the middle of a Venn diagram about sophisticated fine dining and also this crass commercialization that we see on a few other songs on Indiscreet. So it's present elsewhere as well, not least on The Lady Is Lingering. But I'm going to zoom forward now to 1981 and we'll see how Sparks have turned this fine dining that reflects their style of lyric writing on its head, and instead we get fast food.
Tips for teens. Tips for teens. Don't eat that ice cream. Is it vanilla? Give it to me. Don't eat that pastry. What's in the middle? Give it to me. Don't eat that burger. Has it got mayonnaise? Give it to me.
This song is Tips for Teens, and it's the opening track to Whomp That Sucker, the album where Sparks returned to their rock roots. But they didn't just repeat the past, they reinvented themselves as a far more silly band. This was all about fun. So the fine dining goes out the window, and instead we get ice creams, burgers, pastries, mayo. So like the album is not really good for you, but it's tasty as hell. And in its own way, this can be like mood board lyrics as much as dance, laugh, wine, dine, talk and sing, even if it does give you a bad belly.
It started on a Tuesday. It must have been that lunch meat.
And now we're on to Dodgy Lunch Meat, and it doesn't end there.
You're gonna take a walk in the rain and you're gonna get wet. Out of date. You're gonna eat a bowl of chow mein and be hungry real soon. Out of date.
So who doesn't like a bowl of chow mein? But it's not filling, it's not nutritious, and it's certainly not sophisticated. This is I Predict from Angst in My Pants, and later it makes a call back to these posh, sophisticated restaurants that I was talking about.
Don't worry, it'll work out. Maxims will throw them out.
So back in the 1950s, Maxim's was the most famous restaurant in the world. It's where Nouvelle Cuisine originated. And here, they're being thrown out of the most famous and sophisticated and cool restaurant in the world, which is calling back to their old sound that they've left behind. And instead, they're choosing things like cold beer and pretzels.
Cold beer will cure a cold. Cold beer and pretzels takes care of cancer.
So it sounds like what Sparks needed in musical terms at this point in their career was more akin to junk food and snacks. It's something that stops the band from getting ill. They're using this to erase their past, and they say as much on the song Instant Weight Loss.
That's it. What's done is done. Erase the past if you can. With ice cream, with coconut pie. In less than a week, I'd undone. Instant weight loss.
So with this incarnation of Sparks, they've erased their past, and instead of a fine dining, they've got ice cream and coconut pie, as well as a new hobby.
Now I got a hobby. I collect frozen pizzas. Check out my pizzas.
That song is called The Decline and Fall of Me, and it's one of many songs from this era that can be a self-deprecating view of Ron's own songwriting in terms of sophistication. It's like he's acknowledging that he's aiming lower. So his work is like a collection of frozen pizzas. And all of this adds up to what I said earlier in the episode. Sparks can be winners and they can be losers, and whichever approach they take, they're still great. It's like Michelin star chefs who are choosing to make frozen pizzas. So now, let's revisit the very next fight with this idea in mind.
Blood on the floor of some posh restaurant. Deep down, I'm sure that this is what you want. And what you want is what I want. What you want is what I want.
The line "blood on the floor of some posh restaurant" captures the destructive side of what Sparks do really beautifully. It's about what they do to keep their art alive, with the posh restaurant representing the sophisticated form taken by the band during the post-millennial era, starting with Little Beethoven. This era featured concert pianists and candlelight dinners home and perfumed ladies, so of course the restaurant would be posh. And here, it's Ron's muse that's calling for blood on the floor. The line is, "Deep down, I know this is what you want." So she wants him to be destructive. His lover, as his creative muse, wants him to destroy. And this makes sense because had they just stuck with a winning formula as a band like most bands do, then it's likely that their careers wouldn't have lasted far beyond the 1970s. And here they were in 2006, like 25 years into their career and still sounding fresh. So of course that's what she wants. And what his creative muse wants is what Ron wants. What you want is what I want. As in a prolonged creative streak.
And what you want, and what you want is what I want, is what I want. And what you want, and what you want is what I want, is what I want. It's always the same, it's always the same. It's always the same, it's always the same. And what you want, always the same, it's always the same. And what you want, always the same, it's always the same.
The line, what you want is what I want, is remarkably similar in sentiment to the conclusion of the song Dick Around, which opens the same album and comes just 2 songs before this. In that song, the main character feels that he might not be simpatico with his ex-girlfriend, who's looking to rekindle their relationship.
So take me back. I love the way you scratch my back. Well, there is something you should know. We might not be simpatico.
And she responds with this.
I don't care what you do, dick around, I will do. I don't care what you do, I'll dick around next to you.
So the conclusion to Dick Around has a near identical sentiment to the conclusion of the very next fight. I don't care what you do, dick around, I will too. It's a really nice fit for what you want is what I want. It's like Ron is on the same page as his creative muse, and what they both want is this prolonged creative streak. But it's worth noting that Dick Around and Perfume, the 2 songs that precede the very next fight, both conclude with these new relationships that are started on new terms. On Dick Around, his muse says she'll do what he wants. And on Perfume, Ron says, well, screw the past. It's like a new start. So they both want this prolonged creative streak, but on new terms. Possibly because this destructive way of working just can't last. So Hello Young Lovers is trying to redefine Sparks' way of operating. And looking at the past, it's always been the same. It's always the same. So Sparks had just had a big success with Little Beethoven. So if they operated the way they used to, then this would lead into the next failure. They'd work on something that misses the zeitgeist, like Balls or Terminal Jive or interior design. But now Ron has decided that they need a new approach.
Open displays of affection. Open displays of affection. Open displays of affection. Open displays of affection.
And this is how the song closes, with a reminder that it's not all about fighting. It's not just the fight that's led to this really long, successful career. It's just as important to Sparks that they appreciate their own work as open displays of affection. And this line works as a kind of template for how Sparks are going to approach their future. They'll prolong their success not with self-destruction, but with affection. Think about where Sparks went from here. The next major project after the album Hello Young Lovers was the 21 by 21 series of concerts. This was a residency in London where they performed every one of their albums in its entirety from start to end. All faithful renditions performed in the original tempo and the original key, including B-sides. So it's an unbelievable feat that they pulled off here. And it's about as deep a love letter as they could ever write to their own music. It's an open display of affection. And that was quickly followed by other projects that celebrated their history, such as the orchestral renditions of Kimono My House and the stripped down unplugged tour that they performed with just keyboards and vocals, which was the Two Hands One Mouth tour. So for a band who were famously reluctant to look back on their own history, a band that only released the greatest hits because they were forced to, these projects were out of the norm. I can't imagine any of these being done before the Little Beethoven era of Sparks. But none of this is to say that they gave up on that fight. In fact, you could say that the 21 by 21 shows were Sparks fighting harder than ever. But the difference here is it was always going to be a fight that they would win. From here on in, Sparks would not be losers. And all of this, of course, is a huge concept. And it's one that doesn't end on this song. Because in the next episode, I'm going to be talking about Baby Baby, Can I Invade Your Country? Which is also about fighting, but scaled up. And it's the start of a really important chapter in Sparks' career, where they set their sights way beyond what people would think is possible. And I honestly can't wait for this next episode and the few songs that come after it, because I truly believe that understanding these songs will completely change your perception of who Sparks are as a band. So that's a great place to draw today's episode to a close, and I'd like to thank everybody for watching, and I'd love to read your comments. And as ever, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe and share this far and wide. And I really can't wait to put out a new episode soon. And watch out for an upcoming episode I've done with Ad Rebirth on the #1 song in heaven. And once again, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.
Some idiot staring at your legs, I know. You quietly tell me I should let it go. But how can I let it go when I can't control myself? How can I let it go when I cannot help myself? It's always the same.